Thank you, Dorsal. For those who were on the board last year, you may recall the September 2023 in-person meeting where we invited the planning staff of each of the SKIP cities to talk about the preservation needs of their respective jurisdiction. You also provided great insight through a survey where you helped define the preservation challenges of your jurisdiction. So that meeting and information exchanged there kicked off the development of the Subregional Affordable Housing Preservation Strategy we're going to talk about today. And the planners, myself, and Dorsal, SKIP's program coordinator, met at least every month and multiple times a month throughout the fall to develop the document included in your agenda packet. The purpose of the subregional strategy is to provide a guide for each jurisdiction to consider incorporating into their comprehensive plans and to use in a way that best meets each jurisdiction's needs. Planners are welcome to copy and paste, to take whatever works and leave what doesn't, to rephrase to best meet your jurisdiction's needs. Our goal was really to get as much alignment as possible across the diverse subregion, but we fully understand and appreciate the autonomy of each of your legislative bodies in determining what gets adopted in your comprehensive plans. So that said, each jurisdiction likely has a small handful of items that align with the subregional strategy, and some cities may consider including attaching the subregional strategy to their comp plans. So some items may be phrased differently in your jurisdiction's comp plans, but the concept is the same. So as SKIP staff specific to this subregional preservation strategy, we are committed to facilitating implementation of any policy or implementing action that all or most cities adopt in their comprehensive plans related to preservation or displacement, and where sub-regional collaboration is required. So if you've had a chance to look at the document, which was included in your agenda packet sent to you on Friday, April 12th at 3:38 p.m., and it's also in your calendar invite for this meeting. You'll notice the document is organized by goals, policies, and implementing actions. So these are planner language is what I'm calling it. And it's how the Department of Commerce wants to see the comprehensive plans laid out. So goals are the higher level objective. The policies are the high level how of achieving the goals and the overall policy of a jurisdiction on the topic in question. And the implementing actions are those actions that will be done to advance the policies and goal. The sub-regional affordable housing preservation strategy includes 3 goals, and I'll go through all 3, then provide one example of a policy and implementing action. We won't go through the whole document because it's quite lengthy, but we can certainly answer any questions and look at it if you'd like after we go through some examples. So goal 1 is to preserve existing supply of affordable housing. This goal has 6 policies and 6 implementing actions. The policy example 1.2 says, develop strategies to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing at risk of redevelopment and rehabilitate units when they don't pose a health or safety risk. Implementing action example of this is explore incentives to landlords such as tax relief for the preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing. Goal 2 is ensure rental housing stock is safe and habitable. Goal 2 has 4 policies and 5 implementing actions. The example policy 2.2 is ensure that rental housing units comply with life and fire safety standards and provide a safe place for tenants to live, including renters with disabilities. An implementing action example is support the development or continuation of a rental licensing or registration and inspection program. Explore options for establishing a program on a sub-regional level. Goal 3 is keep people in their homes and protect communities at risk of economic, physical, and cultural displacement. This goal has 7 policies and 8 implementing actions. An example is policy 3.1, explore opportunities to implement a community preference policy or a first right to return policy that prioritizes members of the community in new housing developments. An example of implementing action on this one is build relationships with a variety of partners, nonprofit developers, faith-based organizations, philanthropic organizations, local businesses, and community-based organizations to collaborate on solutions that keep people in their homes and prevent displacement. Other parts of the document include an introduction, which describes what the document is and its purpose, a glossary in the back, and a table that shows alignment with the required countywide planning policies, which the planners need to show they are being responsive to the requirements of the state and the county. So I have done a lot of talking, but we've actually invited the planners who are the real drivers of this work here today, and invited them to speak for 3 to 5 minutes each about how the content of the strategies will be or has been incorporated into their draft comp plans, the unique aspects of preservation or anti-displacement that their jurisdiction is addressing in the comp plans and how the strategy aligns with that, and their feelings on the overall process of developing this collaborative sub-regional document, and anything else really they'd like to share. So not everyone who participated in this work is here today, but I want to especially acknowledge the leadership and collaborative nature of Kristen Holdsworth, long-range planning manager of the City of Kent, and Cheney Skadson, senior planner of the City of Federal Way, who both saw the alignment early on between what the cities were required to do through their comprehensive planning process and SKHHP's work plan item. So a big thank you to them and everyone else on this call today who participated. And with that, we are going to hear from, I think it's 6 planners today. Someone had to drop out from your cities, and we'll go in alphabetical order of jurisdiction name. So I've got Josh, are you here with us?
I am here, yeah. Thanks, Claire. And it's very helpful to have Skip housed at the City of Auburn, so I can, when my computer crashes, I can walk down the hall and use Dorsal's computer. So glad to be able to make it today. My name is Josh Steiner. I'm a senior planner leading the long-range planning for the City of Auburn. And so the City of Auburn developed a housing element and housing needs and characteristics assessment as part of our 2024 periodic comprehensive plan. These documents provide the policy and technical analysis to comply with state, regional, and county requirements regarding housing capacity and affordability. Staff conducted a thorough review of existing goals and policies to identify policies that may need to be amended to meet those agency requirements, as well as other kind of requirements at the regional level. We found that while many of our goals and policies were still applicable that were developed in the 2015 plan, there were certainly some opportunities to include additional content, specifically including preservation of existing supply of affordable housing, and identification of communities at displacement risk, and also identification of mitigation strategies. Displacement was identified as an area of concern since the majority of renters in Auburn have household incomes at or below 50% King County AMI, especially those identifying as people of color or Latino. The South King County Affordable Housing Preservation Strategies guidance Skip provided through this collaborative process with other South King County jurisdictions was a great resource of proposed goals, policies, and actions to include in the city's housing element. Appreciated knowing that there was regional consensus on many of the goals and policies, since housing really is a regional issue, and we incorporated a number of those goals and policies directly into our housing element. Not only to comply with those agency requirements, but to participate in the sub-regional affordable housing preservation discourse. Our housing element, housing needs and characteristics assessment, and also our housing element were accepted by Planning Commission on April 16th, and with a recommendation for adoption expected in July. I appreciated being part of this sub-regional group and think the information sharing between the jurisdictions specifically especially the development during the development of our comprehensive plans was beneficial to my own understanding of housing needs and issues, as well as help make our housing element more impactful. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh. Next, we have Daphne Hernandez in the city of Covington.
Hello, I'm Daphne Hernandez. I am the Associate Planner for the City of Covington, working primarily with the Comprehensive Plan update. I will just kind of first start off saying that Covington is a little unique compared to the rest of the SKIP cities, as we are fairly new city, incorporated in 1997, making most of our homes newer. So the preservation of existing supply of the affordable housing in Covington leans more on newer developments, leans more on supporting the funds and preservations of naturally occurring affordable housing in coordination with local jurisdictions. Many are those that are on call today, and SKIP. So something that was important for Covington was to point out the partnership with SKIP and kind of some of the work that we've been doing, because we acknowledge that we don't have much, if any preservation in Covington. So something that was not directly called out in our comp plan that we learned was kind of the maintenance of housing. So that was something that it was implied but never really called out. So under goal 2 in the attachment that Claire went over, we kind of used some of that language as well. And I guess my experience with kind of being part of this SoCIHO group is just kind of learning what other cities, again, Covington's a lot smaller than Kent and Auburn and Renton, all kind of the bigger cities. So it was really nice to go back and have the discussion with at least my director and say, hey, this is what Auburn's doing. They have a tenant program or whatever policy that they're going to be adding to their comp plan. How would that, do you envision that being in Covington? And we kind of had those internal discussions of, we don't have the budget or just kind of the staff that would help fund that compared to the other cities. So we made our goals and policies a little bit higher level, knowing that maybe in the next 10 to 15 years, whatever that looks like, we would be able to do part of what other cities are doing, but just acknowledging that we are just smaller. So that was just a little unique for Covington, but I think it was really interesting just to see what other cities are doing and just keeping that in the back of our mind when I was talking to my director about affordable housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Daphne. And yeah, Daphne mentioned the 10 years. I mean, the look ahead, that's what this periodic update is, right? And it's kind of hard to know, like, well, in year 5, what are we going to be wanting to do? And so it is a challenge. And I think these planners are doing really amazing work addressing all of that. So let's move to City of Kent, Kayleen Novus.
Good afternoon. I'm Kayleen Novus, the Long Range Senior Planner at the City of Kent. Thank you for inviting me today to address the board regarding our collective efforts for draft housing preservation and anti-displacement strategies. Under a previous successful partnership with SKIP, Kent and 5 other partner cities and funding from Washington State Department of Commerce, we adopted our Kent Housing Options Plan in 2021, which laid the groundwork for Kent's creation of 9 anti-displacement and housing preservation efforts in our plan. Since then, the adoption of our plan, significant changes have occurred with state laws, the King County planning policies, PSRC's Vision 2050's multi-county planning policies, and additional requirements. This has necessitated all of us to revisit any policies we may have had in place and our preservation efforts. So we really appreciate that SKIP has taken the lead in identifying options to meet these requirements at a sub-regional scale. The process was interesting and long. I stepped into it in the middle as I returned from leave. But it was a series of meetings over several months with planners sharing resources, experiences, ideas, and all while trying to find a way to navigate each city's individualism and also find context for a having something aligned. So one thing we found interesting was that while we were sharing similar challenges and common goals, the context for application is different within all of our cities based on our individual landscapes and dynamics. We felt that at Kent Planners, we were uniquely positioned to offer support from some of the things we learned in KHOP. Specifically, we were one of the cities to do an in-depth comprehensive analysis of mobile home park preservation. So we did feel like we were able to add some valuable experience and additions to this resource. Specifically, we learned during that process that it's also important to talk about rehabilitation of units to ensure life, health, and safety goals, and not in addition to preservation efforts. We also appreciated the opportunity to hear lessons learned from other cities about their rental housing inspection programs that may be operated differently from ours, or early results from implementing their housing action plans. We are still in the early phases of updating our housing element goals and policies. So we have not yet had the chance to use this document, but we'll be using the Kent Housing Options Plan and this document as a foundation for our comprehensive plan preservation strategies. This will provide us a really valuable supplement. My favorite part of it is the matrix at the end of how all the policies align with CPPs, which we're required to demonstrate for the county's review of our housing element. Moreover, it highlights the opportunities where we can leverage SKIP as a resource and continue on our subregional collaboration efforts, which we've proven have been very fruitful for us since at least 2019. The City of Kent is honored to have contributed to this collaborative endeavor, and we look forward to utilizing this resource to further our commitment to housing preservation and anti-displacement efforts, both within our city and the South King County region. Thank you.
Thanks, Kayleen. Next up, we have City of Maple Valley, Matt Torpy.
Thanks, Claire. Thank you, board members and staff. Matt Torpy, City of Maple Valley Community Development Manager. So, we find ourselves in a very similar situation as Daphne with City of Covington. We incorporated in 97 as well. A vast majority of our housing stock is newer, market rate housing stock. We do have very little naturally occurring affordable housing. We do have some mobile homes, and we do have some affordable rental units as well in an apartment complex. So that being said, we are reaching single family build out as well. So really the only housing stock that we're seeing coming in the near future is going to be the mixed use and multifamily variety. So we proactively got ahead of the game a couple of years ago and adopted code that requires a minimum of 10% of all units be affordable to people making 70% of the AMI or less in perpetuity. So there's no sunset clause on that. We currently in the pipeline have 400 units under review. So we're going to see 40 available units coming online here in the next probably year and a half. So that's really good news for Maple Valley. As far as our comprehensive plan process, we're a little bit ahead of most everybody else. We were the first to submit to the King County Affordable Housing Committee, and we have already met with staff and are under review, and they had a very positive reaction to our goals and policies for our housing update. We did incorporate this SKIP document earlier on. Obviously, we got it into King County before this draft that you're reviewing was published. But we do have goals and policies that implemented the 3 goals that Claire read off to you, including policies to strive to preserve our existing housing stock that meets the affordable needs of our community. Policies that recognize that our existing mobile homes provide affordable housing options and should be preserved. A policy to work with other jurisdictions, including regional groups such as SKIP, and our Vine Maple Place, as well as our food bank to provide rental assistance and emergency services. Our city has obligated a good chunk of our HB 1406 funds to work with the food bank to provide rental vouchers. That program seems to be working well. And as well as policies to strive to reduce racially and culturally disparate housing impacts. So I think that we're going to have a very good product coming out with the help of SKIP, surrounding jurisdictions that I've talked to for advice, and are just moving forward. I think we're going to have a very good housing element of our comp plan. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Matt. All right, City of Normandy Park, Nicholas Matz.
Hi, Claire. Thanks, everybody. And thanks to Mayor Zimmerman, who has been stalwart in his support of our periodic update work. So we have fewer population and fewer housing than most neighborhoods in our partner cities here, but I think the city has consistently stepped up and understood its role both in housing and creating affordable housing opportunities and preservation of existing housing. We are focused in our housing element on meeting our targets and understanding that our affordable targets are a different story. But the benefit of using the sub-regional policies document here is we can identify specific policies under the goals that are going to help us with a primary focus on NOAA preservation, naturally occurring and affordable housing. And I think that's a really helpful discussion point for people who didn't understand or don't understand how the role that NOAA plays in communities. But it's been really helpful for us to do that, particularly with our planning commission. So we're going to bring in policies 1.2, 1.5, 2.2, and 3.4, and I won't refer them specifically, but we're going to bring them into the housing element draft that we're preparing with some tactical implementation around them. For example, under goal 1, which is the preserve existing housing, we're not identifying we revised our land capacity analysis scenario. Don't tell anybody, but we are not identifying capacity in our multifamily zones because that's where our NOAA is. And I think that's a really important shift for the city to be making. And so that these policies will help us with that work. Under 2.2, of course, we're going to continue to bring the Housing Capital Fund recommendations to the City Council through the SKIP process, and to make sure that that continues to be supported by all member jurisdictions. And of course, for us, we're putting our money where our mouth is because our Housing Capital Fund share this year went to a project that is doing preservation work, rehabilitation work, which I think is really where residents and stakeholders in this community understand how that can help themselves and the region, even though the project was elsewhere. And then finally, I think under goal 3, which is where we're looking at keeping people in their homes, we're looking at we're excited about talking about new partnerships with affordable housing providers. Last month, our planning commission had a joint session with some of our religious organizations that own property in the city, as well as the Homestead Land Trust CEO, Catherine Hosfeld. Thank you, Dorsal. And it was an inspiring conversation in regards to that. So in regard to all that, the planning commission has gained an awareness of the role of this existing housing, how it plays a role in managing to keep residents in the community, and these sub-regional policies are going to be really helpful. And I too express some frustration at this powerfully iterative process of consensus that staff used to under Dorsal's and Claire's guidance used to develop the sub-regional policies, but that just made them stronger. And so for us, it's a cookbook of tools that we can go in, adapt to our own needs, but then know that the entire organization, the entire SKIP organization, said this is our playbook, this is our cookbook. I'm better with cookbook analogies than sports analogies, but the idea that you can have all these tools, apply them to your own city, and it still comes back out with this regional focus and with the focus that's given, that's been really beneficial for us.
Thanks, Nicholas. And I'm thinking I should rename the document to Cookbook of Tools for Sub-Regional Preservation. Oh, love it. Thank you. City of Renton, Angie Matthias.
Thanks, Claire. I am new to this team. I've only been a part of it for a few months, and we also don't have our housing element yet. So we haven't really initiated this work with our planning commission. And we definitely appreciate this guidance in this document. And I think there's a lot of power in being able to say that this is from SKIP and this is all our partner cities in SKIP. We absolutely see the value in that, as well as the value of SKIP in general. Just to be having these regular meetings and these discussions is key. For Renton, I can tell you for sure that as we're not a new community, we've got a lot of older housing stock. It's over 100 years old. We've got housing stock that was built for World War II housing that was intended to be temporary housing that's not. But we also have a lot of upward pressure. One of our communities just recently, townhomes are selling at $900,000 in Renton, which is just absolutely stunning. I've been with the city for about 16 years, and that is just mind-boggling for us. So we are living this, absolutely, and understand the vast importance of naturally affordable housing. And so we really appreciate the thoughtfulness in the range of policies and all of that. We do have a number of related policies in our existing we have a housing and human services element, and we have some that are very similar, but it would be helpful to strengthen them. And so this document will really help us be able to do that.
Thanks, Angie. And City of Tukwila, Neil Tabor. So he was scheduled to be here. He had a conflict he wasn't able to come here for, but Neil was a very active participant early on, and I know Tukwila was one of the first folks that submitted their draft for review, and so we were able to use a lot of the content that Tukwila had published to incorporate into this document. So that was very helpful. That is all the planned speakers we have, but I do actually have a letter, written comments from Cheney Skadson from City of Federal Way that she wanted me to read. So I'm going to do that. Right here. All right. So Cheney says, by 2044, Federal Way is expected to accommodate 11,260 new housing units, 66% of which are needed above 80% AMI. The composition of the future housing need allocated to Federal Way is informed by the existing housing stock, of which nearly 4/5 or 80% was constructed between the 1960s and 1990s. The majority of existing housing in Federal Way serves households within the 50 to 80% AMI bracket. These units, totaling over 13,000, are essential contributors to the city's housing landscape, providing affordable options to low-income households. However, the segment of Federal Way housing stock faces challenges and at risk of vanishing amidst an increasingly competitive market. Federal Way and neighboring South King County cities have historically experienced lower property values compared to metropolitan cities like Seattle and Bellevue. The public investment in regional transportation and the siting of future light rail stations through South King County is expected to accelerate housing prices in South King County, adding additional pressure. While some units remain affordable due to income restricted covenants and agreements, many are approaching term limits with pending expirations or have no protections at all. A majority of Federal Way's affordable housing is attributed to naturally occurring affordable housing, or NOAH. NOAH represents unsubsidized housing that remains affordable due to factors like age, location, amenities, and building condition rather than income restrictions or government subsidies. In light of these challenges, preserving existing affordable housing ensures a range of housing options for residents with varying income levels. Moreover, preservation also promotes equitable housing-related outcomes, as certain racial groups are disproportionately cost-burdened and severely cost-burdened, leading to increased vulnerability to displacement and more likely to be affected by housing instability. While planning to meet the future housing need in Federal Way, one primary focus is stimulating residential development for market rate housing to meet the largest share of housing need. These efforts can be paired with the preservation of existing affordable units for a time efficient and cost-effective approach to supporting and maintaining a balanced housing stock when compared to focusing on developing new affordable housing alone. Preserving these units presents its own set of challenges, programming and funding to control fading conditions, from deferred maintenance, monitoring, and pending expiration of income restricted covenants, and developing tools to address rising costs may be best studied and addressed at a sub-regional level with neighboring cities sharing demographic and market realities. Over the last 6 months, Skip has hosted a series of meetings with the South King County Housing Planners, or SKHHP, to discuss the comprehensive plan, periodic update, and compliance with the Growth Management Act, Vision 2050, and the King County countywide policies. And I know Cheney was on vacation today, so she couldn't be here, but glad she was able to submit some comments for us to share with you. So we will be sharing. So thank you all. First of all, thank you to all the planners who came today for all of your really hard work towards developing this document and sharing your insights and thoughts with the executive board. That's incredibly helpful to hear it directly from you. So we will be sharing this sub-regional strategy on our website. And once those comprehensive plans have been adopted, SKHHP will be taking an inventory of where those through lines and overlap are across the jurisdictions. And based on that information, we'll sort of determine if there are items where the majority of cities align and where sub-regional coordination is required. Those will be the items that I envision Skip providing coordination and resources towards. And so, Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions the board may have, and also if there's questions for our planners as well.
Thank you, Claire. I want to second the appreciation for all of our planners, the work that has gone into this, and I am excited to see sort of where the overlap is. Also acknowledging and something I think you'll hear all of us say, oddly as a sub-region, but also individually, there are just differences in our cities. And so the idea that I think we'll ever get to everybody should do the same thing is one of the things I love about this group. We don't go there, but collectively there are a lot of places that things align. So just want to say thank you for that work. Any questions regarding this work of any specific planner or city that anybody has today? Looks like you all are going to get off easy. Oh, I saw Sonari come off.
It's not a question. It's so they're still getting off easy. Just acknowledging the work as well. I think it's something that I've been wanting to see for a while, because even as other parts of the region that aren't used to dealing with preservation and displacement are realizing it's a rising concern, I think it's always been a concern of Skip and of this region. And I'm really excited to see some more specificity and the collaboration with staff on this. So just expressing my appreciation.
Thank you for that. Brian.
Zoom changed and I don't know where the virtual hand is, but also I'll just raise my literal hand here. Thank you. And I appreciate your comments, Mayor Ralph, on the collaboration with recognizing the differences of jurisdictions. I think we all want the same goal, but we just have different ways of going about it. I wanted to thank Claire for adding the statement at the beginning of the document that talks about where this is coming from and how this can serve as a sort of a so each city may consider incorporating some or all aspects. I appreciate that comment in there. I think there's some of these my city would definitely incorporate it, and others that probably would not. So I appreciate the flexibility with that. And also, I want to have one clarification that again, this is for cities. So when it says things like identify and monitor or evaluate city actions, this is a city voice or a city policy that cities can choose. It's not a Skip thing that Skip is going to identify and monitor or evaluate city policies. So I just want to be clear on that, but I really appreciate the effort that's gone into this and also the statement at the beginning. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And yes, to clarify, yes, this is written in the voice of, I would say the goals, policies, and implementing actions are written from the voice of a city. And we try and be very explicit and clear when Skip and sub-regional coordination would be helpful. And those would be the items, excuse me, that Skip would be jumping in on if there is alignment across, most cities.
Brian, does that address your concern or your question?
Yeah, no, yes,
Okay.
and Claire and I have talked, and so I think this is great.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, well, again, thank you to all of our planners for the work that you've done on this. And I do think, sorry, to your point, I felt very lonely probably 2 sessions ago at the legislature, except for my South County friends saying things like, we can't focus only on brand new stock. We've got to focus on protecting what we have and setting those targets and that kind of thing. And it is starting to come around. I'm starting to hear folks from around the region realizing that preservation is something that we've got to be paying attention to. So, all right. If there are no other questions, we are going to move on in our agenda to board business. We have the 2025 SKIP work plan and budget. The SKIP interlocal agreement requires the executive board recommend an annual work plan and budget. And last month, we provided some direction and working to finalize that document. Our goal today is to review the changes of the draft and hopefully consider it for adoption. So Claire, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And are you seeing my slides?
We are.
Good. Let me bring up my notes. You are. Right. All right, so let's try this. All right, super. So the final draft of the 2025 work plan and budget can be found in your agenda packets. And also it's in the calendar invite. We're on the final stretch of adopting the 2025 work plan and budget per our interlocal agreement requirements, and wanted to just briefly review the development process with you. So we started this year with a survey to the executive board and advisory boards, then developed a draft work plan based on that information and shared it with the staff work group. A revised draft was developed based on feedback, and that draft was shared with you and those detailed changes at our last meeting on March 15th. So you, the board, provided direction that you were comfortable with the draft and proposed changes. Further, the board provided direction that you wanted to use the interest earnings accrued on capital funds towards the operating budget to allow for a cushion in future years should we need it. So that has been incorporated into the budget, and you'll now see an estimated beginning and ending fund balance for next year in the 2025 draft budget reflecting that addition. So you also provided direction that you wanted to ensure that SKIP was coordinating with the respective jurisdiction when a property owner of affordable housing reaches out to us to get connected to nonprofits to potentially preserve the affordability of that property. So that clarification has also been added to that action item. And we had a good discussion about whether to add a number of action items to the work plan, and one stood out as an item of general interest and received 5 votes in support to add the work plan, or to add it to the work plan. That item was discuss how best to honor homelessness in SKIP's work. So I did promise you all that I would inquire with the 2 board members who weren't present that day about their opinion whether or not to add this item. And based on their answers, we continue to have a split vote. So that said, this is an item of interest for the board. I did not include it on the work plan, but after speaking with Chair Backus, it's my understanding that she would like to bring forward a conversation around a similar topic over the summer. So please be on the lookout for that chair-initiated item for discussion, likely in July or August. Back to the process diagram. As you can see on the slide, we are here at the second to last step in the process, developing the annual work plan and budget. So should you adopt the work plan and budget today, the next step will be for the legislative bodies of each of your jurisdictions to adopt it. So due to my maternity leave, the staff work group members will be shepherding the council materials and presenting to your councils in my absence. And I can't express how grateful I am to those staff work group members for doing that and for their support. So thank you all for that. And to assist in this work, I'll be developing the council materials. They should need to inform your legislative bodies on the work plan and budget prior to my leave beginning May 13th. So with that, I am happy to take any questions you may have before considering a motion to adopt.
Right, Tracy.
Before the motion, I do just want to say I was ambivalent about the homelessness conversation or how that might appear in our work plan. Just for staff considerations, I really wanted to be sensitive to that. But I do appreciate that the conversation is coming up and it is in our name. So I'm looking forward to just having this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I know that it's very important to Nancy that we try and sort of wrangle with what does it mean and how is it a part of the work that we're doing, all while being very aware of we're doing a lot of work with a very small but mighty team. So and then there's organizations around the region that are also doing similar work. So I think it should be a good conversation. Any other questions on the work plan before we call for a motion? Okay, I am not seeing any hands raised, so a motion would be in order.
So moved. This is Tracy. Do I need to read the particular motion? I move to pass the work plan and budget as read.
Perfect.
I second. This is Eric.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us down to our next agenda item, the 2024 Housing Capital Fund Guidelines. So each year our executive board adopts guidelines and priorities for our Housing Capital Fund. Last month, we had an opportunity to discuss the changes from the 2023 guidelines, and we're able to develop that 24 draft. Today, we're going to review those guidelines. And again, the hope is to adopt our 2024 Housing Capital Fund guidelines. Claire, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you. And we are looking good for ending a little early today. So just want to acknowledge that. So thank you. So we are entering a SKIP's third annual funding round of the Housing Capital Fund. It's kind of hard to imagine that, but it's true. So SKIP members pool resources from Substitute House Bill 1406, House Bill 1590, and the General Fund for Affordable Housing Construction and Preservation and Rehabilitation in South King County. So the interlocal agreements for pooling sales tax receipts to administer funds under RCW 8214-530 and 540 require that for each funding round, the executive board identify funding guidelines that includes funding priorities, the amount available, eligible activities, geographic areas, and more. So every year we adopt the funding guidelines with minor adjustments. So included in your packet is a finalized draft proposal for the 2024 funding guidelines, along with the red line version where you can see all the changes made from last year's document. The goal today is to review the changes from 2023 to this year, answer any questions you may have, and if the board is ready, ideally adopt the updated 2024 guidelines. So I'll go over the summary of changes using slides. Then if the board has specific questions or you want to see the language in the document, we can switch over and review the actual document once we go over the slides, if that works for everyone. So First change is to clarify that the funding priorities are in alphabetical order. They're not prioritized. So that was a request at the last meeting you all had suggested. Then under the funding priorities, we added clarification on the home ownership eligibility up to 80% AMI for the substitute House Bill 1406 funds pending enabling legislation is adopted and updated for those funding cities that have that in place. So we don't want to promise that we can fund that if that legislation isn't able to be updated in time. So we're just caveating that a little bit. The preservation funding priority language was expanded to include income restricted properties and acquisition. Last year in our process, we had an intent to apply form that was optional. And when we did get those forms and provided it to our jurisdiction staff during the pre-application meetings, the feedback that we got was, that's really helpful information to have. And so instead of making it optional this year, we're making it a requirement that needs to be provided to us in advance of those pre-application meetings. So we can go into those meetings having a pretty good idea about the project proposal. We added language that funds sourced from the general fund. That's the $300,000 that CTAC is providing this year. The language we said in terms of its flexibility is that those funds may be used for any cost associated with the development or preservation of affordable housing up to 80% AMI. So you all had provided direction. You wanted that flexibility for that use, and we can see what projects apply, how those funds are requested, and decide once we see those applications what to do with those funds. So as part of the document, we also include award terms, meaning what goes into our contracts as a condition of receiving these funds. So under other award terms, I added quite a bit of content based on a lot of frequently asked questions I've gotten from developers to preempt those questions. And so that included that SKIP's funding commitments last 3 years from council adoption. So we need to have a contract in place within that 3-year period of time. Otherwise, they need to let us know what's going on, or they may need to reapply as well. That funds provided are only on a reimbursement basis. So they need to be submitting their invoices for expenditures in order for us to fund them bit by bit throughout that process, which is a common, it's a common act that public funders do. We don't just write checks, right? And I think in government, that is typically how we do it, is on a reimbursement basis. Additionally, SKIP will hold a 5% of the funding award as retention until construction is complete and the requirements of the contract and obligations are satisfied. And that we do require a competitive bidding process. We require 3 bids when they're using contractors. And we also require prevailing wages. Let's see, so the review process was also updated in the document. And that's really to reflect our review process from last year. So we removed the jurisdiction staff from the initial review process of an application. This was based on feedback from the jurisdiction staff that it's a lot of information, and we wouldn't withhold it if they were interested, but they said, well, we don't really need to see this. And so we removed that part of it. And then clarified that the decision-making process goes to the advisory board first for a recommendation to the executive board. And then we moved the reference to asking a jurisdiction where a project is to be located who hasn't contributed to the Housing Capital Fund for a letter of support. So this is really to reflect how we did this last year. And I think of King County and the Lehigh Skyway project that we funded. We didn't ask King County for a letter of support. Mainly, we knew that they were supportive for a variety of ways. We knew that, but one of the ways is King County is a funder of that project. So that didn't seem to be relevant there. And I think about future potential cities where this might apply. So if, say, the city of Black Diamond, for instance, if there was a project where we received an application from them or to be located in that city, we would still reach out to them in that initial phase for the pre-application meeting to ensure that we were all kind of on the same page and understood, the position of the city. And so it seems that in our process, we already have some steps in place to address what I think this item was trying to get at. So I did take that out.
Claire, I'm going to jump in just really quick. And I don't know if this is, I feel like this sort of fits in a couple of different places. And it's maybe a continued concern, wanting to make sure that cities, specifically the electeds, whether it be a mayor in a strong mayor form of government or your council in a city manager form of government, has the ability to weigh in before a project gets out of the gate. I just think it's really important that cities retain a step in the process. Once it becomes public, once it becomes an agenda item, once it becomes a broader conversation, if there are reasons that a city is not comfortable with a project, and there can be many, I just want to make sure we're retaining that ability. I don't want us using a collective funding source against one of our partner cities, or being a city on the receiving end of that.
Yes, thank you. So this was something that the board, if others recall, we talked a lot about last year, and we talked about how do we ensure that the city is not going to be against this project. And we workshopped the language together, if you recall this meeting. This was the language that is still in there. So I wanted to highlight it for you all. And the process that we all agreed on last year, which is here, that the staff from the project location jurisdiction shall notify the respective SKIP executive board member and administration of the applicant's intent to apply, and may consult with their legislative body on the project proposal. Within 2 weeks of the pre-application meeting, a jurisdiction may submit a statement on the project proposal to SKIP staff as part of the project's Housing Capital Fund application. Should the jurisdiction not be supportive, the proposal shall not move forward for consideration in the current funding cycle. So that language, I believe, is speaking to that concern. Yes, SKIP does not want to be doing anything to cities that cities don't want. That is not our culture. So I wanted to ensure that everyone knew that language is still in there, very intact.
Thank you. Tracy, you want to weigh in here? So, and I think this all gets tricky with the different forms of government that we all represent too. So wanting to make sure that we've got sort of both sides covered.
So I appreciate the work here. Thanks, Claire. And so I do see, I actually ended up making a couple of notes on that exact paragraph. And I think one of the reasons that we weren't as, that we didn't nail down the language as much on that particular paragraph is that we felt like it had been covered elsewhere. Well, but now some of that language, it might be repetitive, but it does possibly ask for a little bit stronger language in the paragraph that you pointed out. I think, and you're right. I mean, I think this will be now the third time that this conversation has come up, because I think we get more and more, the whole homelessness, affordable housing subject continues to morph as our communities morph in our responses and how things have changed so much even in the last 5 years. So on my form of government, I'll just say there have been some interesting and unique projects that have come through without the elected body knowing or understanding. And however that ends up happening, they weren't affordable housing projects, but I would like to protect the voice of the elected body as the touch point for the citizens. And many times staff isn't as connected with the will of the citizens or the emotional response of the citizens or what's going to happen. In other words, if something happens that is the neighbors, the citizens aren't happy, the electeds are going to be the ones that are going to bear the brunt of that. So I feel like we need to be protective of how these projects move forward. I think that's so. If you're looking for something more on that, there's a possibility of offering where it says applicants' intent to apply and may consult with their legislative body. You could put something like shall notify a legislative representative. In other words, it does require some kind of notification to the legislative body that a project is going in somewhere in the city so that they know about it.
And I think we talked about this because we have folks at King County where this wouldn't necessarily, I think what I heard last year was we don't want to have to do that. But I don't want to speak for Sunari, who can speak for herself on this topic.
Yeah, that's correct. And, doesn't mean our will needs to dictate what others might want in place for cities, but we don't want to make it a requirement across the board because for us, it's really difficult. We do notify our council on all sorts of things. But when it comes to these projects, we tend to notify after the fact. They've already, all these projects, as Claire has noted, typically already have our funding in them as well. And we do preserve a lot of staff autonomy in making these kinds of decisions. But yeah, just as long as the language gives us an out, I think that's what we'd be looking for.
Colleen.
So Claire, I'm wondering too, if you can talk a bit about where this process is typically by the time, I guess I'm thinking about the projects that have happened in Berrien. And by the time that SKIP funding is being considered, given the amount that comes out of SKIP, other fund sources are secured or in process. Some development review has already been occurring. I mean, I'm just thinking about the 3 projects that have happened or 2 projects that have happened in Berrien, and it was not brand new news, you know? I mean, I feel like it's also helpful to understand how by the time these last bits of funding are trying to be secured, it isn't a huge surprise to a city that the project is being considered. So I'm just, and maybe that's unique to the projects in Berrien, or maybe that's just the sort of timeline of how projects flow. So I'm just curious if that helps at all to understand that where projects are when they're receiving public dollars, and typically our dollars are married with CDBG or home dollars or things like that, so I'm just wondering if that helps at all to understand the process timeline that of
Colleen,
when our funding gets added in, and that it might not be brand new news to a city by that time.
Claire, I'm going to jump in really quick with just maybe a little perspective on that. I don't think, and I see that Tracy has her hand up as well. So yes, a lot of times staff is aware of things that maybe council is not, especially in a council manager form of government. In a strong mayor form of government, I'm here all day, every day, so talking to staff. So I think there's a little bit of difference in dynamic, and then the county is sort of a whole third form. But there's also something to be said about a project that's going forward regardless, because it meets all the criteria, the zoning is correct, the funding is there, and then a city putting sort of a stamp of approval on a project with contributing funding to it. There are absolutely projects in the city of Kent that are working their way through the process that we don't have any legal ability to stop. And in the eyes of some are great projects, in the eyes of others, not so great projects that politically doesn't make a ton of sense to say, we're going to cheer that project on. And I think that's got a little bit more to do with this, at least from my perspective. It feels different when you're paying for something that maybe the city isn't a fan of versus it being able to stop it. Those are not the same thing. Tracy?
Thank you. So just to clarify what I think, Colleen, right? My screen is super limited. I can only hear voices. I can't see them right now. People, that was you, Colleen, right? Talking about, okay. Okay. So, so what you're saying is, since SKIP is almost right now in our process of existence, we are not going to be a primary funder. We are always a partner and subsidiary funder. And until we ever are, maybe this is not as crucial right now as it might be if we are the primary funder on a project. And so that might be a point of compromise, as long as we make sure to always review this language here. But if Sonari's temperance in this is mostly having to do with the county process versus a city process, if they're like one of 12, right, partners, maybe we just put something about cities in here. I mean, I'm trying to find a solution that makes sense for everybody. And really, as an elected, you can even see with our quorum today, there are less and less electeds where that come to the table where these decisions are made. It's because it's a very planning oriented. It's a very kind of an in the weeds process. So more and more as we move forward, as SKIP moves forward on autopilot a little more, I can see that being less and less of an exposure for electeds. I'd say most of the people attending today are staff. And I just want to protect that. That's where I'm at here. And so if there is a way to put shall notify the legislative representative, if that adds way too much work, okay. But do you see where so that would be a recommendation, and I'm not married to it. So if nobody likes it, that's fine. But if you put shall notify their legislative body, that doesn't mean you have to put it on an agenda, but maybe somebody just reports out on the city manager report or something, or the mayor.
I have a question. In your form of government, would adding in legislative or executive branch cover it? Because I like the in a strong mayor form of government, it would come to the mayor. In a council manager form of government, it would come to
City manager.
City manager. Does that cover your? Does the word administrative or executive branch work? Because so the only way to get for me to get it in front of council would be to make it an agenda item. And I think that the reality is that sometimes these are very sensitive conversations. And I don't, I feel like once it's on an agenda, it's a long ways down the road.
Yep.
So Tom and then Brian.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I kind of want to follow up on that a little bit. I'm wondering about the 2 weeks where it says that everybody gets notified and there's a pre-planning meeting. How long does that take? And the legislative body has only 2 weeks prior to the pre-application meeting. They've got to weigh in on it. Are they given ample time to understand really what's going on, to weigh in 2 weeks prior to an application meeting?
It's a quick, yeah. So this is reflective of last year's discussion where I think we were allowing pre-application meetings like basically up to the point of applying because it was a requirement for the application. So we needed enough time to be able to let the applicant know if their project was going to be moving forward or not through the skip process before they would spend all that time submitting an application. That said, we have a revised timeline for when those pre-application meetings are through, and I think it's August 16th is our cutoff. We're not going to be holding meetings past that time, and our deadline for application submittal is September 13th. So we need enough time so that folks can have an answer. And I think that's where we landed on the 2 weeks, because we don't want it to be too long, because then if we find out really late in the process, but they've spent all this time applying, it's helpful for the applicant to know sooner rather than later. If it's something that a city has issues with or not.
But Tukwila is like Kent in that we got to put it on an agenda and we got a whole process to go through. We don't meet on the 5th Monday of a month. I mean, I can envision a scenario there where the 2 weeks or the time elapses without the council really having a chance to weigh in on it.
And I think the intent of this, or how this would work in practice, was that it might be a behind the scenes conversation where you're being notified, and if you have concerns or you think one of your council members may have concerns, avoiding obviously any public records issues, but understanding the perspective maybe behind the scenes rather than a formal council action. Although if cities want to take the formal council action, it's a last minute item on that agenda, I suppose. But I think administratively, the thinking was a less formal process to just understand, the perspective on it. And usually if there is an issue with a project, it's it's already on the radar of the electeds. And at least that's what I'm learning.
Yeah,
But
I don't know if it's always a given that it's on the radar of the electeds. Staff has a lot of pressure to just do what they do and seem to be overworked, and it could get missed. So I want to safeguard the legislative body's at least chance to hear about it.
so
So, Tom, the conversation last year was around making sure that an elected is in the loop. So that doesn't necessarily have to be a council, but if there was a project coming that I was aware of, then I could have a more informal conversation with council, or just sort of say, you know, I know where they're at, we're gonna be doing thumbs up, thumbs down, as opposed, the problem is that once you go into a formal process, it then does become an agenda item, and then it's a much more, it takes away from the, I mean, so I'll just say, you've got a particular provider that that Tukwila has a history of working great with. That's going to be awesome. If you've got one that you've got a history of not being so great with, then feels like a more like, hey, Skip, we're uncomfortable with this for these kinds of reasons. But to Tracy's point, in a council manager form of government, how are we getting to an elected who gets to make that, you know, do that temperature check? Brian.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me lower my hand. So we've discussed this a lot, and I probably have been the most vocal about this because our jurisdiction feels very strongly about this, that if there is as we mentioned, if there's a project, then the jurisdiction needs to be aware from it. I really appreciate the comments that have been made, and I think this shows that this is an evolving implementation for this. Just based on what I've heard, I agree that the staff component is problematic because they're ultimately not the responsible, ultimately responsible representative from the city. So I would be in favor of changing that to notifying the chief executive of the city, which for a strong mayor would be the mayor, for a council manager would be the city manager, and increasing the response time to 30 days. And for a council manager form of government, it's 30 days, and the city manager has not looped in its elected body. Let's leave it to that city to sort it out. That's plenty of time, in my opinion, for them to do that. But I think changing it from staff to the executive, I think is a good move because that really helps with the accountability and the communication back to the applicant. And I understand that, to Claire's point, we're trying to get the applications through in a timely manner. But this is a really important step. And I think if we're just saying, well, we need to hurry and get the applications through, and that's why the window is so short, I don't think that works. I think we need to make sure that this step is checked off in the process, and if it takes longer, then it takes longer. And so that would be my comment and recommendation.
Thanks, Brian. Sean.
Just one thing for this city councils, for the city managers, if we could just like at least have it say where it's the chair / mayor is CC'd on it, just because they'll make sure it's moving forward. Does that make sense? Or somewhere worded in there that one of the electeds for the city is whoever the city elected official is at least notified.
Yeah, and to Mayor Kelly's point, we could change. My suggestion was chief executive. We could just say mayor, and if the council manager mayors are comfortable enough taking that on, then that works too.
Because when I get notified of anything, it instantly goes to the city manager.
Yeah.
But then I flag it if it needs to come to the full council, and I'll put it on the next agenda.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm following. So, okay, let's start from the beginning though of this sentence, because I wasn't totally clear about the role of staff here. Because
So the preceding
It's not
paragraph
dedicated.
mentions the pre-application meeting where the jurisdiction staff is present. And so I think we need to add a step where Skip notifies the mayor of the jurisdiction that it's going in. And then they get, my recommendation is that they get 30 days to respond.
Strong or council manager, former mayor, either mayor.
Okay. The chief executive. Wait, you don't want to use chief executive anymore? You want to say?
What if we just say mayor?
Yeah, I think if we just leave it at mayor, that works. And we give them more time because a lot of, I think with the council manager mayors, they don't, and forgive me, Mayor Kelly, for different, but I think the strong mayors have more, like Mayor Ralph mentioned earlier that she's there every day. I think the council manager mayors are not there all day. They might be there every day, but they're not there all day. So I think if we give them more time, then we can simplify it by saying just mayor.
Yeah, I'm seeing a fair amount of thumbs up. Sean, did you have another comment, or I'm going to call on Eric?
No.
Okay, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. There's a number of federal or state level communications that also just come to the mayor, agnostic of whether it's a strong mayor or a council manager system. And I think this just mirrors communication mechanisms and notifications that are already built in at other levels of government. So it works for us.
Thank you. Sonari.
Yeah, I just asked that because I'm going to have to jump off in a couple minutes, that you amended to say for cities or something at the beginning, and then say for the county, notify the executive board member. Just because if Dow gets an email along these lines, he will then send it down to us and say, what is this? Do I need to do with it? And yeah, we just like to avoid the bureaucracy. Thank you.
Yep, that makes good sense.
So for the county's part, okay, I want to follow along. Okay. For cities, Skip staff, wait.
For projects based in cities.
Yes. Project.
Located in cities, maybe.
I think the wording later in the paragraph clarifies that. Oh, I see. You're carving this out from the county. I'm sorry.
Yep. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then what about the board members? I mean, we don't want to forget about them, so.
Be CC'd, or I don't know.
I gotta clean this up. Let's look at it this way. Okay, here we go. Is that better? Okay, for projects located in cities, Skip staff shall notify the mayor and city manager, if applicable, of the applicant's intent to apply and may consult and shall, or do we need this? Do we still need this if the mayor is being consulted?
I think that covers the consultation piece. So I'm seeing Tracy's, yeah, so I think we can take that out. Okay. Then it leaves it up to an individual city on what that next sort of process looks like on the formal side, but.
Okay. Within 2 weeks of, okay, and we're going to change this to 30 days. Is that right?
Yep. Bye, Sonari.
Bye.
We'll see you in a few months.
Well, a lot of months. I'm actually taking almost 6 months off, but
okay,
yes.
well, so we'll see you.
It'll
in a
go
lot
by real fast. Yeah. Thank you.
Within 30 days of the pre-application meeting, a jurisdiction may submit a statement on the project proposal to Skip staff as part of the project's housing capital fund application.
I think it's within 30 days of being notified.
Okay. 30 days of being notified of the pre-application. Okay, notified. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep. Gotcha. A jurisdiction may submit a statement on the project proposal to skip staff as part of the project. Should the jurisdiction not be supportive, the project shall not move forward for consideration in the current funding cycle. All right. Did we address? Let's look at these. Let's look at the comments here.
How does everybody feel about that? I'm seeing thumbs up, both actual and virtual. Feel like we're in a good spot. Nice.
It might be nice to see a cleaned, like a version with all of the edits accepted, just for readability.
Sure.
Yes. Let's do that. Oh, there we go. Okay.
So for projects located in cities, SKIP staff shall notify the mayor and city manager, if applicable, of the applicant's intent to apply. Within 30 days of being notified, a jurisdiction may submit a statement on the project proposal to SKIP staff as a part of the application. Should the jurisdiction not be supportive, the proposal shall not move forward for consideration in the current funding cycle. I feel like that is as close as we have come in the now couple of years that we have done this to getting at the intent.
Super.
So for the county, you'll just have to identify a designee that Sonari agrees to, or how's that work for them?
I think the designee, Sunari was meaning that it would be Sunari or the county representative to the board, to the skip board.
Right, so let's see, where should we? So we should add it here then, huh?
So maybe in the case of projects located in unincorporated King County.
Skip board member.
Yes.
No, thank you. Skip board member to consult who, okay.
Maybe just in there.
I think maybe it's like skip staff shall notify the county's representative to the skip board or something along those lines.
To maybe we just leave it at that.
I think it just, yeah.
Maybe we just leave it at that. Because that allows the county the flexibility to decide what they want to do. We're not saying you have to do this.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Okay, great. Unincorporated King County skip staff shall notify the county's skip board member. Okay. All right.
Perfect.
This paragraph is good.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Absolutely. This is the fun part. There are a few more changes I wanted to go over. Let's see. All right, so the review process. So we added CTAC, of course, to the skip map at the end. And then just made administrative clarifications and updates. This was like small spelling and grammar. And then also provided the amount available, which is $4.1 million this year, which is absolutely amazing. I hope you all feel just really excited about this. So between last year and this year, you have pooled over $10 million. for affordable housing in South King County. And that is a number that I was able to brag about to some state representatives at a meeting on Wednesday at the Housing Development Consortium, and let them know all the good work that that our cities are doing on this in this field. So really excited about that. And then also I updated the area median income, or the AMI tables, which every year HUD updates those. So I put those numbers in with the rent thresholds as well. So when we say 80% AMI, we're defining exactly what we mean in these tables. We use those tables in our contracts every year. So that's what I got for you.
Nice.
And yeah, if there are other questions or thoughts, if you want to look closer at the document, happy to go back to that red line version, if that would be helpful on any of this information.
Okay. Any comments or questions on where we're at before we call for a motion? Okay. I'm not seeing any hands raised. That means a motion would be in order to adopt the 2024 Housing Capital Fund guidelines as amended by this amazing conversation.
So moved as a read. This is Tracy.
I'll second. Sean from Maple Valley.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Nice work. This is a big deal. And the celebrating of the over $10 million, I think is definitely worth mentioning a second or third or fourth time. So there's a lot of money being utilized in really positive ways in our communities. So thank you to everyone for getting us there. All right, the last item on our agenda is updates and announcements. And Claire, I feel like you've got to have a few words for us, knowing that this is probably the last time we will see you for a little while.
I know. It's hard to believe. But so, yeah, so as the chair is alluding to, as a reminder, this is my last executive board meeting until October, as I'll be going out on maternity leave beginning May 13th. I'm returning September 23rd. So Jeff Tate of the city of Auburn, who the name may sound familiar, but he served as the SKIP manager before the role existed back in the early days. And he will be filling in for me during my time away. So after May 13th, you should feel free to reach out to Jeff. His email is jtate@auburnlaw.gov. And also feel free to reach out to Dorsal Plants, our program coordinator at dplants@skip.org. Both of those emails and contacts are listed in your calendar invitations for this meeting. So we have got a good outline of agenda topics and outside presentations coming to you over the summer months. We'll continue on the Meet the Developer series that we've heard about. And I do believe Mercy Housing is coming to our next meeting. So that should be exciting as well. We'll also be doing briefings based on the survey responses that you all provided and said, here are some of the topics I want to learn about. So we'll be working on putting those together as well. I also want to announce that Dorsal has been hard at work organizing an affordable housing tour for our September in-person meeting. So logistics will be forthcoming, but the overall plan is to meet in Auburn, jump in a bus or a van, and make stops at the SKIP-funded Habitat for Humanity home ownership project in Burien, hear from Habitat staff on that project, then head to Victorian Place 2 and hear from the Multi-Service Center on the work happening there, which is the preservation project you all funded for last year and that you just heard about at your councils. Then we will head to the Sunset neighborhood in Renton and visit the Homestead Community Land Trust Willow Crest Homes and hear from Renton's planning staff on that neighborhood plan in that area, which, if you haven't been, is just a really impressive affordable housing community and neighborhood, and is just so beautiful. And I felt, as soon as I saw it, I said, oh my gosh, the board needs to see this if they haven't already. And a number of our advisory board members will be present on that tour as well, providing kind of tour guiding information on those projects that they have a deep familiarity with. And then regarding my maternity leave, the only major pause in our work will be the contracting aspect of our projects for the Housing Capital Fund, which I'll talk about in my next update shortly. But should you need anything prior to May 10th before I go, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I look forward to seeing you all in the fall. And then I wanted to let the board know that I'm in the process of closing on 2 funding contracts before my leave. So one is that Habitat for Humanity homeownership project in Burien, which we should be closing on in the next 2 weeks. And then the Victorian Place 2 project, the goal is to close by May 1st. And I did contract with Pacifica Law Group to assist me in the development of some contract and funding document templates that can be used for all of our future projects, and really will streamline this process for us. So you'll see that expenditure reflected in the Q2 progress and budget update reports later in the summer. And then it was brought to my attention that there are 2 conferences of interest to much of the board during our regularly scheduled June meeting on June 21st. So to avoid a lack of quorum for that meeting, I'm wondering if rescheduling to June 14th from 1 to 3 p.m. would work for the majority of the board. And I'm hoping you could all look at your calendars now and let us know. And if that's not possible, we can send out a doodle poll. But if it's possible to know today, we can go ahead and make that change. And this would likely be an in-person meeting in Auburn, since the June 21st meeting is our regularly scheduled in-person meeting, and we only get together 3 times a year. So wanted to see, does that work for people? Does that absolutely not work for people? I have 1 thumbs up. I see another thumbs. So it would be June 14th from 1 to 3. It's moving it just 1 week up.
I just raise our hands, put a raised hand on our window so you can
There we
see
go.
all of us.
And the hand indicates yes, that works for me.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5. All right. 6. Okay, great. That's quorum. Great. Good. Let's do it. Thank you.
That Friday is the travel day at the end of AWC. So we started talking about it, thinking that there's a good chance that folks will be at AWC. So.
Yep. Super. We will go ahead and move that calendar invitation. Thank you for humoring me on that. And then I also wanted to send a hearty congratulations to Councilmember Rivera, who's getting married shortly, and wanted to wish her all the best during this really exciting time. And oh good, she's here. I thought I saw her jump off, but it sounds like you might have a cold, so I'm hoping you are in good spirits for the upcoming events. But yes, wanted to make sure the board knew about that exciting personal news. And as Sunari mentioned as well, she'll be out on maternity leave, and Sochi Makovich will be filling in, and we're excited to welcome her to the board this summer. And with that, that's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
James. Oh, your hand. I didn't.
Just forgot to put it down
all right.
after.
Perfect. So that brings us down to the bottom of the agenda. I feel like we got a lot of good work done today. Thank you all for participating. We wish, Claire, we wish you the best and cannot wait to see pictures. Congratulations, Carmen. And same to Sonari. So with that, we are adjourned.